Well, a group of foreign nationals have been nabbed for theft amounting to well over 100 million rand. The three of them were allegedly targeting U.S. companies, hacking them and then stealing information. I understand the extradition is over to the U.S., where they could be facing a very lengthy federal prison sentence. Very complex, very sophisticated crime, which is why I'm very glad that I have Forensic Investigator Chad Thomas from IRS Forensic Investigations with us this morning. Hello to you, Chad. I appreciate the time. Give me the background to this, because I'm seeing reports 116 million rand, 3 Nigerians, all done from Johannesburg.
Yeah, very good morning to you. There's so much to unpack with this particular story. It's a well-known fact that criminals have taken advantage of state capture. One of the downsides, many downsides of state capture, was that our law enforcement agencies, our criminal justice was in some ways incapacitated. That's not to say they're not capable, it's just to say that they're lacking in certain areas of infrastructure and they are just overwhelmed with the sheer number of cases. This has meant that a lot of international syndicates have made South Africa a springboard into which they've conducted crimes of an international nature, and this is one of those. This is a syndicate that used cybercrime, digital fraud, to be able to perpetrate crimes on American citizens. The monies were transferred out of American bank accounts, wired into accounts under these guys' control. And that is why they're going to be extradited to America. Now, one very important fact that we need to take away from this is despite the fact that South Africa has been grey listed and we have had capacity and infrastructure issues, this was very much a multi-jurisdictional interagency takedown. In other words, it wasn't Americans coming onto South African soil, arresting people and now wanting them extradited. They worked very closely with their South African counterparts. So you had the United States, Homeland Security, Secret Service, Department of Justice, U.S. Attorney working together with the DPCI, working together with the Interpol office in Pretoria, working together with the task force, and they were able to take the syndicate down. This type of relationship is a very valued relationship. We've seen a lot more of these relationships being established. We have not been abandoned by international law enforcement partners. In fact, the relationships have been strengthened so much that these multi-jurisdictional interagency type operations are becoming more and more of a norm rather than an exception. And by doing something like this, we are sending a very clear message to international criminals that they cannot make South Africa their home. We have enough of our own criminals. We don't need to import criminals. And if we have to work with our international partners, we will.
It's important that we highlight that as well, especially as you rightly mentioned, Chad, that the grey listing is for various reasons. One of those was the inability to fight crime and financial crime just like this. So it does, I think, at least move that argument forward that we're moving in the right direction, though. But this is a big case. But does it mean, in your opinion, that we're on top of cyber crime like this in our country, or is it just because this is such a high-profile case here you and I sit?
Look, the world at the moment is facing a deluge of cybercrime or digital-related fraud. When one looks at the statistics coming out, South Africa is in the top 5. But surprisingly, the country that was targeted the most for this type of online crime was the United Kingdom last year. The United Kingdom experienced a massive increase in fraud. And this is a country that people look to. They believe it's a country where law enforcement is foremost. They believe that everybody's ahead of the game. But just fraud last year, in terms of reported cases, remember, a lot of fraud goes unreported because people are embarrassed or people don't believe that it will be recovered. But just reported fraud in the United Kingdom last year was 40% of all crime investigated and all crime reported. That is a massive figure. South Africa is in the top 5 in terms of digital fraud. That says a lot about our systems that are available in South Africa. It says a lot about our infrastructure. But like you so rightly mentioned, we have been grey listed for a number of reasons. And one of those reasons is the fact that money laundering has taken place on a large scale in South Africa. Now, law enforcement was hollowed out during the capture years, but that doesn't mean we don't have the necessary skill set and the necessary members wanting to make a difference. The problem is capacitating them and increasing the infrastructure. The members are carrying double the amount of dockets that they're carrying. The Hawks are only 50% capacitated. We need more prosecutors, we need more magistrates, we need more courts, and we need more detectives. More boots on the ground isn't going to make a difference. It's the investigation of crime that's going to make a difference. And we see more and more organized crime is going online. We've always thought of organized crime as the guys who are involved in contract killings, guys who are involved in the movement of drugs and other illicit goods. But we're seeing more and more organized crime syndicates churning to the digital space because that space is easier for them to operate.
It is. And just a last brief answer from you, Chad, if you don't mind. I'm not sure if you're able to tell me. I might be asking an unfair question here. Are you able to tell us how these three were caught? I know you said it was an interagency takedown, essentially, but is there a lesson here that can be learned how they were caught in the end?
Very much so. We weren't involved in this particular matter, but we know the members that were involved from the DPCI and from the US, and these are very dedicated, committed members. And they've extended, and without wanting to let the criminals know just how sophisticated the law enforcement have become, but they've extended their operations to include our local law enforcement, to include our banks, to include the organizations that have been set up to help assist in the monitoring of illicit flows, etc. So we're going to see more of this, and it's a good thing. We need to see more of these criminals leaving our shores so that we can concentrate on our own local problems.
I was so impressed as well to hear that was so many various agencies working along with South African agencies as well, because I was very worried about the grey listing, that we were sort of just in the financial crime wilderness. But this is at least a good way to show that actually not all is lost. Chad, I appreciate the time. Thank you very much. The over 116 million rand worth of fraud money that was stolen as well, but the three Nigerians are going to be expedited over to and deported over to the USA. They were here in Johannesburg in the West Rand. Can you believe it? But they were caught, and now the long arm of the law has finally caught up with them. I appreciate Forensic Investigator Chad Thomas for his time this morning. He's from IRS Forensic Investigations.